Hey there, respawners. Welcome back to Dark Alliance. They just released the 1.19 update today. It is out now. Go download it. They have an absolute ton of changes that were made, some that don't really do anything, which I'll get into it a little bit later, and some things that are definitely missing, which I will cover that as well. Let's get right into this. So starting off, we have stability improvements. They did things like fixed out-of-memory crashes after extensive playtime with both PlayStation and Xbox consoles, fixed occasional crashes on Xbox One consoles, resolved disconnects during progression through Act 3 missions, fixed a crash when returning to base camp after idling in the pause menu during an encounter, and fixed an issue in which a hang would occur after the player opens the menu right before a cinematic. Personally, I never experienced any of those, but any of you who have experienced those, let me know down in the comments if any of that seems to be working now. So next up, we have balance improvements. There's an absolute ton of stuff in here, so let's see how quickly we can get through this. We have fixed several issues in which Icewind's boss fight phases could be bypassed. I actually thought that was fixed in the previous patch, but I guess maybe it's fixed again. Increased loot chances for higher rarities across all difficulties. I have seen that. I've been able to get more legendaries than I have previously. I don't know if it's just RNG or because they actually fixed it. Who knows? Increased act completion rewards. I can confirm that they are a bit higher. Not a ton higher, but a little bit higher. Increased chance of per act preferred sets from 20% to 33%. I wasn't able to fully test this, but that's nice that they did that. Reduced effectiveness of the burn status effect, which made higher CR bosses too easy to defeat. Okay. Tundra Raptor stamina cost reduction from 10 and 15% to 15 and 20%, so that's great. Wearer of the Mask execution chance of dropping stamina fragments from 25 and 50% to 40 and 50%, so you'll be getting those a lot more often. Goblin Bane taunted monster damage reduction from 20 and 30% to 30 and 45%. Horde Raider legendary resistance buff HP threshold raised from 15 to 20%. Brunor shield master feat blocking stamina bonus from 15 to 30%. Condition penetration per intelligence point increased from 1 to 1.5%. Grenade damage increased. You can see that they just kind of shifted the numbers over one, and the max is now 300 instead of 250. Reduced Duergar's, Knolls, and Icewind health by 10%. Monster hit points reduced by 33% in single player. Monster physical damage reduced by 25% in single player. Elemental damage reduced by 12.5% in single player. Buffed Frenzy from minus 50% to minus 70% stamina cost on actions. Buffed Frightened from minus 50% to minus 60% physical damage output. Buffed Critical Strikes from 50% to 75% critical damage boost. Buffed Precision Strikes from 30% to 50% critical chance boost. Buffed Sapped from 30% to 40% stamina cost increase. Buffed Thorns from 30% to 50% damage reflection. Fairy Fire cooldown reduced from 150 seconds to 120 seconds. Taunt cooldown reduced from 240 seconds to 120 seconds. Heavy Armor Master Feat buffed from 25 to 30%. Medium Armor Master Feat buffed from 10 to 15%. Light Armor Master Feat buffed from 7 to 10%. Dagger Sense Armor feat buff from 10 to 20%. Savage Attacker Stamina Damage feat buffed from 15 to 20%. Steel Will Condition Resistance feat buffed from 10 to 20%. Precision Shot Critical Damage feat buffed from 40% to 50%. Precision Attack Critical Chance feat buffed from 8% to 10%. Second Wind feat buffed, stamina cost from minus 5 to minus 10%. Defender Armor feat buffed from 15 to 20%. Reduced stamina usage for Catti-Bree's moves by 5 to 10%, which is huge because she uses a ton of stamina. And added a short invincibility duration when tethering to party leader. These are huge. People were very upset a couple of updates ago when they kind of nerfed the players and buffed the enemies, and it didn't really make things more fun. So now they applied a ton of buffs to players, so you'll be dealing more damage. All of your status effects will be more effective now. You can do things more often. These are a ton of great improvements, and I'm really happy that they made them. I can say that as far as the damage stuff goes, it does look like, those actually did take effect, so I'm really happy about all of this one. Next up, we have AI improvements. We have enemies no longer keep walking in place when attempting to return to an area. Large enemies can no longer be interrupted from turn on spot animations and are much harder to stun lock. No. I tested this and I could still stun lock large enemies like crazy. I don't know exactly what part of stun lock that they think they're fixing, but it's not. I'm still stun locking, like they're never able to hit me. Enemies now respond more quickly to the player's presence, move more quickly, and are generally more aggressive. That's partially true. When I tested it, when first getting into an area, they did attack faster. However, I would still be able to stand around enemies for a whole like 2 to 3 seconds, and they just stood there staring at me. Walked around like 4 or 5 circles around an enemy before he finally attacked me. So that's still not quite fixed. That's still kind of broken. Monsters no longer change target too frequently in co-op, which resulted in them being stuck in a turn state. I haven't had time to personally test this one out, mostly because I haven't been able to get connected to a multiplayer session in the time since the release of this. So I'm not sure if that's fixed or not. If you do know, leave a comment down below. We'll check it out. Next up, we have UI improvements. Upgrade gear now has cost displayed in consistent locations in the UI. I never saw it anywhere else than what it was supposed to be, so I guess if you had that problem, it's fixed now. Resolved the issue in which objective markers sometimes disappeared when players fall off the map during the Fury of Icewind Act 3 boss fight. I never fell off the map, so I hopefully that's fixed. I have no way of knowing that for sure. If it is or not, I haven't been able to test it personally. Damage over time numbers are now displayed in multiplayer. Players can now rejoin a friend's previous session from the Steam overlay. Lock-on target reticle no longer placed below Hagedorn in the Crystalline Dreams Act 3. Preview now updates when sorting of gear is changed. Invite-only game session now swaps to public or friends after new party leader changes it. Fixed an issue in which the controller loses functionality in the Journals tab. I have seen that actually quite often. I haven't personally experienced it, but I've seen several people mention that one, so hopefully that is now fixed. Corrected a hexed resisted string being shown when an enemy resists to sapped condition, so it should show the correct condition they're being resistant to. Ability cooldowns now have numerical values in the UI, which I think this is great. I always hated just waiting for the bar because I had no idea like how close it was to being full, and so I have tested the numbers are there. It makes it great because then you can keep an eye on it a little bit better. Updated recommended combat power scores according to new balancing and feedback. I didn't see really any new scores, but they did add a little icon next to it, so you can see which one that is recommended for your power level, so that's kind of nice. Stamina now refills immediately after a short rest. Quick play bonus is now shown consistently from different party members' point of view. Updated the estimated act length icons in the world map. A button prompt is now present for an exhausted execute on Akar Kessel. Tether is no longer activated in boss fights with large arenas. Muted players remain muted after returning to Kelvin's Cairn or when another player joins the server. Trial of Tempest intro banner displays the correct location. Fixed an issue in which the short rest UI would sometimes remain stuck on screen. The hold ability button now displays an animation of input while using preset 2 control scheme. Characters no longer get deleted without player input when going back to the character selection screen after confirming changes in the options menu. That is actually a really big one because there's a lot of times I've seen so many people say that their characters kept getting deleted. And so hopefully that is now fixed for everyone and you won't have to worry about your characters being deleted anymore. These next few are for PC only, but it's actually important here. So we've got the M key no longer causes a conflict when it's rebound in the key binding menu. Escape key can no longer be bound in the key binding menu. Windows key can no longer be bound in the key binding menu. Fixed an exploit in which attributes could be increased indefinitely without spending attribute points when exiting the character sheet while in the process of allocating an attribute point using a controller. I never saw this. I really wish I had. I would definitely have made a video on it. Unfortunately, I didn't find that before this patch, so if you ever used that, let me know down in the comments. I think it'd be kind of cool to see, you know, maybe how high you end up getting your attribute points. But as of now, it looks like that's no longer possible if you had done it before. And then voice chat UI pop-up no longer remains visible on screen, even when the microphone is muted. So one thing they didn't mention in this list is the fact that on the map screen now, you can actually see a little icon for all of the attribute shrines next to the missions that have them, and they'll either be grayed out or lit up if you've collected it. Unfortunately, the Order of the One Light attribute point is still broken. I tested it out. You still can't get it. So now the game can taunt you with not being able to collect it. Next up, we have boss improvements. Garn has been made more challenging during the boss fight in Companions of Icewind Dale Act 3. I'm actually happy about that because Garn was so easy before. I mean, yeah, you can kind of get through it fast, but he just seemed kind of pointless and didn't need to be there. Then we have Icewind phase transition during boss fight is no longer delayed. Icewind doesn't receive debuffs from being frightened by Drist abilities. Kelvin's Pillars of Ice now properly spawn around each non-downed player in the arena. Fixed an issue in which Akar Kessel could rarely teleport under the map in Order of the One Light Act 3. Bosses are more difficult to stunlock. I haven't seen that. I was still able to stunlock them, so I don't know what it is about their stunlocking. They still don't have that down. Players can no longer escape certain boss rooms. Bosses no longer aggro downed players unless there are buffs active which override this. Icewind no longer loses her invincibility when a player is revived beside her in the Fury of Icewind Dale Act 3. Icewind no longer becomes unresponsive after a total party down. Icewind no longer flickers above elevator before flying in multiplayer. Icewind's bite attack now correctly causes a hurt reaction. Beholder boss can no longer teleport out of the level and be defeated instantly. Kelvin is now able to hit the player character when performing an upward slash during the Mask of Kelvin Act 3. Icewind no longer constantly uses attacks that cannot reach the player character. That's kind of a big one because that was such an easy way to cheese that boss, is treat it like a Dark Souls boss. Run to the back and just kind of stay underneath them, and then you just keep hitting. And Icewind would always just do like her breath attack, which if you're under her legs, she can't hit you with that. So that's kind of nice. Hopefully, they can make that boss fight a little bit more challenging. Murdoon no longer teleports repeatedly after becoming exhausted while teleporting during the companion's boss fight. Fixed a rare issue in which Icewind's invulnerability buff would not be active between phases in the Fury of Icewind Act 3. Fixed a rare issue in which Icewind's final phase shifts do not occur after the player fires the last ballista in Fury of Icewind Act 3. So as you can see, it's basically they fixed a lot of things that were broken with the Icewind fight. Personally, I never experienced any of these issues playing in single player most of the time. I didn't have any problem. So I don't know. We'll see how that ends up being. Hopefully that boss fight's a little bit better. Maybe it'll be more fun. Who knows? And lastly, we have the general bug fixes. Now there's a ton of these as well, so let's get through this as quick as we can here. So the player character can no longer get stuck out of bounds jumping off the shrine area into a wall on the Goblin Shard. Added physical damage components to moves which were previously only dealing elemental damage. Players can no longer stunlock Hagedorn with light attack while in teleportation animation. Hagedorn now receives debuffs from magic abilities. Resolved an issue in which large chest gear would sometimes spawn in the floor of the level out of reach of players. Players no longer become stuck after jumping onto a specific ledge in Crystalline Dreams Act 2. Viper Fang kick move now correctly triggers the Elemental Adept buff. A Stone Grinder boss no longer instantly dies when knocked into the siege weapons at the end of Companions Act 2. The Short Rest now correctly spawns for an encounter in Beholder Act 1. Elemental fire damage buff from Brunor's Anvil of Clagadin now deals fire damage in multiplayer. Player characters can no longer clip through a specific wall into an out-of-world area near the death plane of Beholder Act 2. Interacting with a campfire is no longer prioritized over reviving an ally. Climbing a ladder is no longer prioritized over reviving an ally. Fixed an issue in which a total party down would sometimes occur with one player still alive. Goblins associated with each ballista no longer have a noticeable delay in aggro to the player. Collision has been added to a wooden wall to prevent players from moving their character outside of bounds in the level the Goblin Shard Act 2. Allies revived with Cadibree's Resurrections ability are now counted towards total revives during the tally screen. Resolved an issue in which players are sometimes unable to join from the friends list. Players can no longer get around the magical barrier in a side area in Verbeeg Jamboree Act 1. 3D model no longer displays previously selected item when switching pages of a specific gear type in the equip panel of the character sheet menu. Fixed an issue in which the player is presented with a white loading screen when searching for a public session before walking onto the portal to start an act in Kelvin's camp. Characters are no longer able to jump into an area in Verbeeg Jamboree Act 3, which renders them stuck and unable to escape. Enemies no longer jitter when moving during a multiplayer session in Verbeeg Jamboree Act 2. The correct pressure plates now remain active after being activated in the puzzle room of Verbeeg Jamboree Act 2. Quick play bonus is no longer awarded in single player. Monster rotations and flying animations are no longer erratic in multiplayer throughout the title. The buff elemental weapon cold from Brunor's Stomping Quake now adds cold damage to attacks while in multiplayer. Steel Will Feat now gives 10% condition resistance. Goblin's Flee reaction is no longer interrupted prematurely. Stats no longer reroll after changing the skin of a weapon. I used this glitch. I loved it. I thought it was really great because, if you didn't get the stats that you quite wanted, you could just change the cosmetics of your gear multiple times until it hit something that you wanted to get. And it was really, really nice. But unfortunately, that looks like it's fixed now, so unable to do that anymore. Added missing barks and banter throughout the title. Fixed an issue in which downed players would occasionally fail to get revived after using a short rest. Abilities now correctly adjust to terrain when cast. Team attack window has been increased to 5 seconds. Reduced the harshness of the VFX from Akar Kessel's Thunderwave move in the Order of the One Light Act 3. Fixed an issue in which players would occasionally fail to connect to or create a session with no error message. Fixed an issue in which some users would disconnect after completing a mission in an invite-only lobby. Switching profiles on Xbox now updates the trophy assets in Kelvin's Cairn. Starting any act in multiplayer while alone no longer resets the difficulty to level 1. Players no longer fail to join session via invitations when the host cycles to an invite-only multiplayer session. Fixed issues involving enemies not respawning when backtracking through levels. Players no longer respawn at the start of certain levels when forced respawning. I haven't experienced that. Maybe I'm not doing the forced respawning correctly, but so far through my testing, I've been able to go right back to the start of the level. Full roundhouse move now triggers elemental adept buff. Fixed issues in which players could get tethered inside walls. Online sessions can no longer be searched after activating the teleportation circle at base camp. Improved Caddy Breeze ranged attacks to address attacks not registering when performed in quick succession while moving. It's better for sure. I still have that problem. There's so many times where it won't register the attack or it'll use the wrong attack. That's still a problem, but it is definitely better than it was before. Players are no longer sometimes tethered into Thick Fog in Crystalline Dreams Act 2. Improved sync of monster attacks and animations. Fixed an issue in which some players would remain stuck on a loading screen in multiplayer. Intelligence now increases elemental damage dealt by abilities with innate elemental damage. Purple ability cooldown fragments now drop from defeated monsters. This one's actually really cool. I know that you can, get your cooldowns like crazy low, but at the same time, this is huge, especially if you're someone who uses your abilities a lot. Like these are nice. I like these a lot. Cinematics now run more smoothly on Xbox One. Character models and gear now load more quickly in Kelvin's Cairn. Improved dodging and aiming responsiveness. Fixed an issue in which players could not re-enable voice chat after disabling it. Cloud save data no longer overwrites character data when joining a multiplayer session. Enemy health bars now correctly display when using lock-on mode. Fixed an issue in which players would be disconnected when returning to Kelvin's Cairn. Characters no longer fall through the environment after holding the block or aim button while attempting to descend ladders in Goblins at the Gates. And finally, Frostwave Grind move now grants the vampiric buff and fills the ultimate on hit. So that's everything that is in the patch notes. As far as the things that are missing, unfortunately, they didn't necessarily stick to the roadmap. Technically, at this point, summer is over, and we still never got the free DLC that was going to give us more difficulty levels as well as a whole nother level. That's still not here, unfortunately. As I mentioned before, the attribute shrine in Order of the One Light is still broken. It's nice to have the icon there on the map to see that you don't have it, but it feels like it's taunting you now at this point. I did come across a new bug, which I actually kind of like a lot. When you're using Cadibri, I haven't been able to test it with other characters, but at least with Cadibri and you use her ranged heavy attack, and you hold that down and charge it up, it's got an area of effect. But now what happens is that for about 2 to 3 seconds after the effect is over with, it'll actually still be there. And any enemies that run into the spots where you hit, they will actually then take that damage. So there's times where enemies will just kind of run up after you just killed something else, and then they'll just die with nothing and no reason. It's kind of funny. I also kind of like it because, just makes Catty even more broken than she already is. I want to do a quick shout out to all of my supporters. Thank you guys so much. It has been an absolute amazing journey, and I can't wait to keep going down this road with you guys. Leave a comment down below with some of the things that you actually liked about this update, some things you didn't like about the update, and maybe some things that you wish were in this update. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button, and if you're not subscribed, please consider doing so. I make guides for various different games as well as other gaming content, and you can check out some of my other videos like these two right up here above me. Thanks for watching.